personalization sits above it. Sorry, Emma, not to, skip past your slide. I actually agree with Emma. It's all about optimization. We're just moving from generic to specific. But for me, personalization sits above all this. It's a communication principle. It's something that creates a relationship between the individual. It's about basically ensuring that brands don't forget the first three syllables of personalization. Personal. It's about acknowledgement, communication, connection, familiarity, loyalty. Well, that's in everything, and how we optimize or how we segment. Creating a personal relationship is just how we do those things.
Looking like a baddie, I show up and make them stop. Wanna know my name so badly, cause I run this whole block. Flip my hair, move my head, show the world I'm royalty. When I walk by, they be taking bows, cause they know I'm the queen, yeah.
Hello! Okay, this is all going to be a little bit weird because I'm doing this at home. I've no idea how this is going to go, but we're going to have a bit of fun. Usually talks are inspirational, or they're practical or educational. Mine sits in the uncanny valley in between, which will probably just be a little bit of fun, let's be honest. As you can see, I'm a huge Disney fan. We're going to get right into it. This presentation wasn't actually designed to be a online-only format. It was designed to be in person. And usually when people come on stage or use a fancy microphone, as I do, they tend to, talk about their credentials, or I'm going to move this around a lot. Let's make it interesting. They talk about their credentials or their experience or where they've been or what they've done. Not me. We're talking about personalization. So it kind of makes sense to be personal. Let's get personal. I got thinking to myself, how can I be personal? How can I be intimate with, some people on the other side of the screen? And I'm not quite sure. I could tell you that I have 2 children, as you saw in the previous image. I could tell you that I have a wife. I love Disney. Yeah, let's go down the Disney route. I love Disney, for goodness sake, obviously. I've been an inordinate 35 times, which is unusual for a 36-year-old heterosexual male to go to Orlando as much as I have. That being said, I think there is only one thing that I can show you that will really, truly allow you to get to know me a little bit better. And that is that I am a celebrity. Roll the clip. This is embarrassing. I don't think you're going to hear this. So this is a UK TV dating show that I was on 12 years ago. Look how young I look. Goodness me, age has not been kind to me. When my mum came on, there she is, bless her soul. She's still with us. I was just with her 10 minutes ago, and she destroyed me. The girls have lights on. The white lights are like, "Oh, David, I'm interested in you." I was particularly fond of that one over there. And the red lights are anyone that is uninterested in you. And as you can see, I'm cute. As my mum outed my love for Disney, a lot of red lights went on. There we go. Enough of this. I'm being personal. It's far too personal. Yes, I get it. I love Disney that little bit too much. Okay. Or I should say, I loved Disney. As I've grown up, Disney has become this, greedy corporation that has sucked its soul from, sucked its soul from being intimate, being personal. As you can see, my children absolutely hate it. We've got Zachary over there throwing a tantrum, and Max clearly wants to go home. Me and my wife just loving life with the mouse himself. It feels to me as though Disney has become something that it wasn't intended to be, where price gouging has become a way of the norm, and indeed so overt that it makes my skin crawl a little bit. And it occurred to me in the queue of Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, a ride in Magic Kingdom, very ironic, I know, that when I was in the parks, I felt as more of a number than a name. And I don't know, there was something a bit dirty, a bit slimy about that. It wasn't the fact that I was wearing a $79 Spirit jersey, or, I just bought a bottle of water for $4.29, which is true, those are the prices. But it just felt that it was so obvious, and prices were always increasing, but the baseline guest experience was always the same. How are these things allowed in 2023? And let me give you a visual to show that from the very trusted source of TikTok. So this is the increase in the price of Disney tickets since 1971, its inception, to 2022, I think this graph goes to. So 1971 prices were $3.50 administration. You could, admission rather. You could get into a Disney park for just $3.50. Today, $179. Now, you might be thinking, hey up, David. Well, for the math sponsor amongst us, that's a 4,000% increase. 3,781 to be precise. But you might be thinking, well, hey up, David, isn't that in line with inflation? No! We can see rent, wages, and gas have only increased at a rate of 1,000%. And you might be asking yourself, well, what's this got to do with personalization? And the answer is actually nothing. But for me, personalization is a reflection of relationship marketing. And relationship marketing is all how to be more intimate with your customer. And that, for me, is what personalization is. And we'll talk about this in a second, but I did a lot of research. And my definition of what personalization is a communication principle that is designed to improve, create, maintain, manage the relationship between a brand and a person. It's just being more personal. It's not terribly difficult. So imagine my delight where in 2019, the masters of storytelling, the masters of relationship marketing, announced their new personalization app, Genie. This was an app where if you were a thrill seeker and you love Princess and the Frog, it would recommend your perfect day, perhaps going on Splash Mountain and meeting Princess Tiana over by the Hall of Presidents. Absolutely amazing, okay? Such a wonderful thing to be announced in 2019. But we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and nothing really came. Nothing came until 2022. And this is what came. A stark difference between what you see then and what you see now. So, hold on. Where are the recommendations to go meet Princess Tiana? Where are the recommendations for Splash Mountain? All I see are recommendations to purchase a lightning lay, whatever that is, for $10. All I see is things that are more overt price gauging. The recommendation here is spend more money with us. So odd, it felt almost like between those two dates, 2019 and 2022, the purpose changed. And indeed, I know this to be true. I know that they rushed this through production because we found some lorem ipsum text that lasted on the app for about a week. It felt as though the purpose of personalization to Disney changed between 2019 and 2022. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what led me, like any other normal red-blooded male, to go away and do 153 different interviews with people to find out whether they also felt as hard done by as myself. Because that's exactly what I felt hard done by. I felt then the number not a name scenario. So I interviewed all these people. You probably recognize some from the fames of LinkedIn. And I turned this into a book. The book's called The Personalization. It's out. Oh, I got the release date yesterday, the 29th of August, which is fascinating. There you go. That's brilliant. You can kind of tell when I'm recording this. So yeah, I got the release date, the 29th of August. And this is basically how I feel that personalization has been talked about for years and years and years. Every single year is the year of personalization. And yet what we've gotten is anything but personal. It feels inherently and ironically impersonal in terms of what we've received today. It feels as though we have gotten this kind of a commercialized tactical view of what personalization is currently in today's society. And we have moved away from this, a more intimate view of how preferences are shaped and curated around the individual's needs, wants, and desires. Goodness me, that's a mouthful, isn't it? So there we go. We've taken a book, 80,000 words, 256 pages. I don't even have a manuscript to show you. I'm in my office. I could do anything I want. We could go grab a book if we wanted to. And how do you squeeze that into what is going to be a 20, 30-minute presentation? Now, usually when I'm on stage, I throw a Mickey Mouse toy. He's not around that I can see. I throw a Mickey Mouse toy into the audience and say, okay, audience, would you like to pick a topic that is of interest to you? We have diverse definitions. That is all about the definition of personalization in of itself. We have Greedy Guts, which is kind of a continuation of the Disney story that I once told, but in the vein of Jeff Bezos. We have Superb Strategy, which in my opinion is the best strategy within personalization. We have Rubbish Recommendations. Why on earth is personalization equals to recommendations and recommendations is equal to personalization? I do not know. I do know there's a few answers. We have AI accommodation and we have the effing future. I won't swear. And then usually that individual picks one of these topics, right? Well, in this case, I'm going to blitz through all of them in 20 or 30 minutes so we're not missing out, because why not? We can do. This is virtual, and it's just me talking. So let's get right into it. What the hell is personalization? I'm going to get my notes up for this one, because why not? This is a very poignant question. What the hell is personalization? But before we ask that question, I kind of want to ask, what is a tiger? Very related question, as you can ask. And if we're asking the question properly, we should probably understand like what the dictionary definition of a tiger is, because generally it's a series of words thrown together to create meaning, right? So a tiger would be a large black cat with orange stripes, or a large black orange cat with black stripes. I'm not quite sure which way around. It's a simple enough definition, right? But it orientates around that dictionary definition, this like generalized term of throwing a bunch of words together to create a phrase. I think that's fine when you ask what is a tiger, but it misses like the essential philosophical questions of what a tiger actually is. You know, the fact that we're perhaps all caged animal. These are awful. It shows my AI prompt engineering skills. Awful representation of a tiger living in a cage zoo, especially this one over here. I don't know what's going on here. Is this tiger's head getting chopped off? I'm not sure. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that a dictionary definition, interestingly, means very little. For me, personalization is more conceptual.
This is Romo Santiago from Experiment Nation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing. It helps us a bunch. Now back to the episode.
It's more like asking what is creativity or what is entrepreneurship. For example, there are different definitions for reference. There's a nominal definition, which is how something is currently understood within an environment. There's an expletive definition, which is a definition that adds context around it to create meaning. There's an ostensive definition, which is the same thing but using examples to create meaning. So there's loads of different ones, and I find the stipulative one, which is the descriptive one rather, which is all about the attributes of a concept. I find that to be the most common way, or the most right way, should I say, to define what personalization is. By the way, I threw in P13N into there. Does anyone know what that means? I only learned this in writing for the book. So apparently P13N is personalization, because it starts with a P, ends with an N, and there's 13 letters in between personalization. Odd, something I never knew. Anyway, so for me, personalization is slightly more conceptual. And when I asked 153 different people what their definition of personalization was, their answers were generally, you know what, all very, very similar. All the sentiment was all the same. Right time, right place, right person, right message, along those types of things. But it's often that is seen as the problem in order to move forward, i.e. the lack of definition prevents us as a society, as a set of marketers, from moving forward into the personalization paradise, shall we say. And I actually disagree with that. I remember Shiva, who may be listening to this, I think he's a doing a talk, I'm not sure. He almost challenged me in agreement of that. Say, David, you need to find this common definition. I find that really ironic, because at the end of the day, personalization is designed for the individual, and therefore for it to have a collective meaning feels kind of oxymoronic. Don't you agree? So we can look at what Gartner say. You know, they talk about technology, and you know, it's based for the individual. We talk about ChatGPT. There's a process. It's based for the individual. We talk about Forrester, which feels as though they've generated like a series of words and they keep on adding to them. I find that to be really common, by the way. You can see here an experience that uses customer data to understand, frame, guide, and extend. There's always 3, and enhance. There's always 4. You know, these like these adjectives, these descriptors that keep on being added and added on some kind of Frankenstein definition that is intended to be addressed to everyone, when in reality it means very little. So imagine my delight when just last year a group of researchers, look at that GIF, keep on going and going, a group of researchers undertook what's called a bibliographic study on 383 different publications of personalization to identify is there indeed a definition? And they found no. There's no alignment on a generic definition. The reasons why is that they found 4 different implementations and 3 different applications, i.e. personalization has different outputs, and therefore the input is different, and therefore the definition is by virtue different. But when we're talking about a definition, I find one of the reasons why there's a lack of definition is that we assume it sits on this maturity scale. It's part of these things of optimization and segmentation, these disciplines, even experimentation to some respects. And I actually disagree with that. I feel as though personalization sits above it. Sorry, Emma, not to skip past your slide. I actually agree with Emma. It's all about optimization. We're just moving from generic to specific. But for me, personalization sits above all this. It's a communication principle. It's something that creates a relationship between the individual. It's about basically ensuring that brands don't forget the first 3 syllables of personalization. Personal. It's about acknowledgement, communication, connection, familiarity, loyalty. Well, that's in everything, and how we optimize or how we segment. Creating a personal relationship is just how we do those things. So therefore, that is my definition of what is personalization. If you are asking and getting to the nub, but I actually find that a more important question than what is why. Why do we personalize? Because that purpose can change culturally, it can evolve societarily, it can differ from organization to organization. So I actually find asking what personalization is less important than why do we personalize, or why do you personalize. Specifically for brands, the reason why the New York Times personalizes is completely different than the way, say, Netflix personalizes. I think we spent too long on that. Usually these are designed for 10 minutes, and I thought I'd blast through all of these like bam, 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 but unfortunately I'm getting far too into it. So let's try and do the next 5 chapters in 15 minutes. Let's do this, okay? So we spoke about that's meant to be the end slide. So we spoke about greedy guts. So greedy guts is like this concept. This is brilliant. If you ever seen Bo Burnham talk about or sing about Jeff Bezos, he has 4 songs on Jeff Bezos. Just such a genius. I love his wordsmanship. That is Jeff Bezos sitting in a garage, creating his masterpiece. And he was he always is. He's been a very high advocate for personalization and customer centricity. We hear about that all the time. I have a really good book, if you haven't read it, Working Backwards, which is an Amazon book. That's actually one of my favorite books, I would say. Very practical, though, less inspirational. And you can see Jeff in an interview talking about customer centricity and what it means to him, and in so doing so, even created recommendations for those who do not know. They pioneered the recommendation system the way that we know it, using what's known as item-to-item collaborative filtering. This is more than just, hey, we recommend this. It's like understanding that an item has a relationship with an item, but it also has a relationship with what other users have had when they purchase that item, if that makes sense. So in 1998, 2 researchers, Greg Linden and Brent Smith, wrote this paper. Such a pioneering paper. 20 years later, they rewrote it. It got given an award. The award was called the Test of Time Award. What's this got to do with anything? Well, recommendations or personalization is very important to them. Let me ask you a question. What percentage of Amazon's revenue comes from recommending items? Arguably, a source suggests that it's 35%. I forgot what that source is, but it is in my book, out on 29th of August. So we needn't forget that Jeff is the one that also said this. Your margin is my opportunity. We also needn't forget that, this is a great YouTube video, by the way. Has the laugh of Jeff Bezos evolved over the past 20 years? Really funny. Question? It has. We also needn't forget that Amazon have been recently embroiled in this, duped for millions of customers into rolling in Prime, that they have this Ring lawsuit over their heads, that they've been slapped with a £900 million fine over GDPR violation. And my favourite one, when we're talking about recommendations, they have been found to push products within some of their recommendation systems that have a higher profit margin, that are more benefiting to them than to the customer. So it's a really kind of polarizing view where we have this individual, this company that has pioneered a space that we currently operate in within personalization and indeed recommendations, which we will come to. They're not the same thing, but they're indeed seen as the same thing, where they're such high advocates for it and created the industry, but at the same time have been seen to, I wouldn't say destroy it, but it almost feels like the purpose has evolved over a change of time. So we need to move away from personalization, which is a nice pun on personalization itself. So there are some data points to suggest that personalization increases revenue. We know that this is the case. We see them everywhere. I think in my book I've shown like what the distribution effect of those ROI is. At the lowest, it's like a 1 to 2, and the highest, I think, is a 1,100 something percent. There are loads of sources that talk about how revenue increases when businesses do personalization, and because of how this perpetuates and how vendors almost self-servingly push these stats out into the wild, it becomes no wonder that brands, stakeholders, C-suites, assume that personalization is designed to increase revenue. It almost makes me kind of sad. But that's a very short-termist metric, is it not? I can increase revenue pretty quickly. I just find the ads that are driving traffic better than others, and I just ramp them all the way up, for example. This is actually probably my favorite ROI stat, which is that, yes, we can appreciate that personalization increases revenue by 10%. However, it also increases customer satisfaction by 30%. For goodness sake, it feels so disproportionately disparate, those two figures, that it should be customer satisfaction that personalization should benefit or indeed focus on the most, not revenue, should it not? And we can look at other companies. We can look at Spotify. We can look at Netflix. We can look at Gusto. I'm saying these faster than they're appearing. We can look at Etsy. We can look at all these different brands. And having spoken to one person, at least, in each of these, I can tell you that it is indeed retention, loyalty, longer-term metrics that are more reflective of a customer's experience that these companies use to measure the success of personalization. Netflix, for example, it took them 10 years to associate that retention is equivalent to personalization. And now do you know how many recommendations, how could I say this, of everything that we view as a customer on Netflix, how much of what we view is recommended by Netflix? 80%. 10 years ago, that figure was just 2%. So I would just like to question or consider, like, has the purpose, or what is the purpose? I don't even need my notes, what is the purpose of personalization, and how has that evolved over time? Because it feels as though companies' original purpose, or indeed how the purpose has changed, is becoming more commercially orientated, and in doing so, that means that how we implement personalization becomes much more tactical in its approach, and therefore removes itself from the very thing that it was designed to be, which is to be personal, a strategic thing that increases or improves customer satisfaction. We've gone through a lot here, haven't we? We've gone through 2 in 10 minutes. I'm not going to get through all of these. Which one should we choose? Let's choose recommendations, because that's... No, let's choose the strategy, and let's just go linearly. And unfortunately, if you need to understand rubbish recommendations, AI accommodation, or the effing future, you'll probably have to read my book. There's loads of themes. All I'm trying to do here is explain what I've learned from, my experience in founding, running, and selling a successful conversion optimization agency, working with some of the biggest retailers in the UK. Here's my pitch. I'm writing a 256-page book, interviewing 153 different people from around the world. I'm just trying to give you the themes that I found to be the most interesting. Now, for me, let's talk about strategy, okay? Because this, for me, this is when we get really personal. This is when we talk about, I think, a word that is omitted from a lot of marketing, in my opinion, which is care. Now, what happened in the 1900s? In the 1900s, you had Chinese railway laborers selling snake oil. You had them complaining of arthritis and joint pain, obviously, because they're lugging about these huge logs in order to build railways, but selling them to the Europeans as a panacea. Hey, this snake oil, I unfortunately can't do an accent, but this snake oil will cure all your ailments. Obviously, it was commercialized. It was commercialized by Clark Stanley, I believe his name was. I would have to check my notes for that one. I've forgotten it. Is it Clark Stanley? Oh my goodness, it's Clark Stanley. Amazing. Okay. It was sold by Clark Stanley and commercialized. Clark Stanley Snake Oil Liniment. That was it. Which eventually got fined for being, quote, drastically overpriced and of limited value about 19 years later. But the point about this is that snake oil, we've all heard the term snake oil salesman, that originates from that story because they were sold usually with wild marketing hype and the counterfeit medication certifications, sometimes under with white coats and what have you, pretending to be doctors. It felt, well, slimy, snake oily. That's where the term comes from. And it felt like marketing evolved over the years to be more about the psychology of selling. So Brian Tracy wrote a book called The Psychology of Selling in 1985, and he spoke about how individuals have individual needs, and then when you're selling to those individuals, your pitch should evolve or change appropriately. Makes sense. I mean, Dale Carnegie spoke about this, for goodness sake, in How to Win Friends and Influence People in 1936 when he spoke about relationship marketing. The one book that I think was really influential for me in my thinking was this one. It's a book by Malone and Fisk called The Human Brand. It's a very dry and practical book, but just very poignant, I would say. And they found that more than 50% of all purchase intent and indeed loyalty can be explained by just two basic human perceptions. And it was within these perceptions, these perception of trust, really, where they spoke about how we trust in each of us, individuals, human to human, and indeed how that is translated in how we trust brands, so human to brand. And those same two attributes exist. I want to pause for a little minute to ask you, do you know what those two attributes are? I'll give you a clue. I already said what one of them was at the beginning. Care. So care, and the other one is competence. So there's this concept of can you help and will you help? They actually use the term warmth. I prefer care because warmth reminds me of like a warm hug or a warm embrace, whereas care feels like it has a little bit more longevity around it. So care is all about helpfulness and sincerity and friendliness and trustworthiness, and reminds me of my grandma. My grandma, or did, she no longer exists, and my grandma would come around to our house on Christmas Day, knock, 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 and she would give me the worst presents known to man, right? They're all 100% getting re-gifted. I know that she cares a lot, but her competence is negligible. Oh, on the other hand, we've already spoken about our good friend Mr. Bezos. Jeffrey, I won't sing, that's Bo Burnham, go look it up. And, you know, arguably Amazon are all competence and no care. They absolutely can help, but do they want to help? You know, this is about efficiency, intelligence, conscientiousness, skill. You know, we could talk about their breadth of products, their fantastic customer service, but we can also, with the same breath, talk about their 900 million euro lawsuit hanging over their heads for pushing products in the recommendation system that customers don't want to buy, but they want to sell. A fantastic and probably arguably the best example that I've seen of this is Bloom and Wild, who created in 2019 the thoughtful marketing movement, where for those individuals who unfortunately do not have a mother, where instead of on Mother's Day sending communications to everybody and it therefore being quite a triggering event for those people who do not have mothers, instead they rightfully just ask the question, would you like to see this information, this communication? They opted people out of email and web experiences if they indeed did not have a mother. Again, because it could be quite a triggering event. What they did is that they initiated a level of care. They focused on the quality of their audience, not necessarily the quantity. They focused on not just the short-term sprint of money, 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 but the long-term connection between them and their customer. Well done, Bloom and Wild. Well done. I think this is a really nice balance between care and competence in a world where we see that care is just too hard to achieve, too hard to simulate, where competence is all about immediacy. You know, I want things now, and I don't want to put the effort into doing it. And I'm reminded of the Dr. Alex Morabian rule of 738.55, where he denotes that it's not necessarily how we interpret meaning, but what we like and what we interpret the meaning to be, where 55% of all that we hear is interpreted or liked through body language. 38% is in the tone of the voice, and 7% is just in what we say. This, when added together, obviously equals 100, but it communicates meaning and context and intent. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the best strategy for personalization. Because I think by only listening more, can we care more? By listening to the 38%, the tone of the voice, and the 55%, the body language, can we actually care more? Because 7% of what users do, or what users say, is not what they mean. Just because a user clicks on some filters does not give us any context into the intent of that user, and therefore, how on earth can we care for them? And this is a tactic that's employed by Spotify. This is a tactic all about intent, where they have understood by some strokes of the mouse, or by some swipe of the thumbs, or the timing that's involved in each of those things, various different attributes are pooled together to create meaning, these almost micro signals that allow Spotify to bucket you as an audience member into one of 8 different intent profiles, from active to passive. Active might be, I really want to listen to the new Moana soundtrack. Passive might be, I want to listen to something soothing in the background where I can fall asleep to. And these intent profiles are what creates the content within those recommendation, what they call shelves, the hierarchy of them, the priority of them. So what is the most important strategy within personalization? Well, the output is care, the cause is care. But how to do that is by listening more. And I really think this all comes down to intent, right? It's one of my favorite quotes in my book, which is that the difference between persuasion and manipulation is indeed intent. And right, I'm fairly biased. We've just created a company all about how to find the intent of your audience online to allow you to demonstrate this care, to allow you to send messages that are more appropriate. As a result, I think that intent is therefore the greatest personalization strategy of all time. I'm incredibly biased, but I do think it's rooted in a lot of research. To achieve that, we need to listen more and shift our measurement of success, i.e. success. I'm not Roger Moore. We need to shift it from immediate conversion, revenue focus to longevity, to retention, which is what I mentioned earlier. There we have it. I've gone through 3 in 30 minutes. I tell you what, I am absolutely sweating. I could carry on. I'm not going to. I'm going to end you with this, maybe, on this slide, which is, for me, like, personalization comes down to purpose. It's not about the what is, it's about the why. Why do we do what we do? I don't want anybody to become the 2023 Disney Genie app. This was created by this was facilitated by the then CEO of Disney called Bob Chapek. And do you know what people called Bob? They called him Bob Chapek. Cheap, as in cheapskate. It's nothing against Bob. I actually think he did some good stuff, some good things. And obviously, you only get one side of the coin in terms of context. But Bob was introduced to this company between 2019 and 2023. He's the one that facilitated. He's the one that created an over-commercialization of the Disney properties, specifically within the parks. He's the one that started charging X amount more and not giving the guests what they need and yada, 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 and creating this app that now means that, get this, guest spending has increased year on year in the parks by 40%. 40. If you were spending $100 in the park last year, you'll spend $140 in the park this year. Why? A lot of it is thanks to this personalization app that they since created. Can you tell I need a little bit of chip for this salt on my some salt for this chip on my shoulder? Here we have it. So, skipping through all of these. Look, there's some really good stuff in these. I think and some great Disney quotes and what have you. I just want to get to the last slide. Oh, there you go. Oh, it's a thank you slide. Okay, there we go. So thank you. There's no questions about Take Me Out, please. If you do have any questions, you can reach me on LinkedIn. There's only one David Mannheim, because it's a rather unique name. My book is out on the 29th of August. Plug. My business is doing really well. We're in beta. I think next week, actually, we are announcing applicants into our beta program. Plug. But yeah, I've been David. Thank you very much for listening. I guarantee you haven't got this far. If you have, give us a nudge on LinkedIn. Tell me what you thought. Thank you.
This is Romo Santiago from Experiment Nation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing.